Hello and welcome to the No Balls Podcast. I'm your host Patrick McDonald. With me, co-host Sheldon Kaufman. Today we're continuing the NBA preseason show where we preview all 30 teams' upcoming 24-25 season. Today we're doing the Utah Jazz, a team that has recently started their rebuilding phase. Um, Utah. Do you have any notes on Utah before we get started?
Not really. I think we both kind of talked a bit about it pre-pod. Is we don't really know where this team is going, but they're definitely going somewhere. So let's get right into it, Pat.
Yeah, and I'll elaborate on that. It's not that we don't think they know what they're doing, it's just we have no idea as outsiders what's going on with Utah. Um, and we had talked about it in the Pelicans episode that we've already recorded but is not out because we don't know the divisions in the Western Conference. Brandon Ingram, and Larry Markkinen were the two guys who I was like, man, these guys could really mess up our show if they get traded and end up on a different team. Actually, yesterday, Brandon Ingram started holding out, so we'll see how that
Really?
works. Yeah, but
Huh.
at least Lowry is going to be in Utah for the whole season. So,
Yeah.
if we want to get started on the 24 team, last season they were 31 and 51. They were 12th in the Western Conference. Uh, I believe after a pretty similar finish 2 seasons ago. Their expected record was 29 and 53, so a tick worse than their actual record, but not too significant. At home, they were 21 and 20, so pretty solid. It's just on the road, 10 and 31. They were not winning many games there. Similar to Denver, they have a really real altitude advantage, so it helps them a little bit at home. I think overall this team would have been a lot worse if they didn't have that severe home court advantage. Um, Similarly to the 2023 team, they actually started pretty solid, 26 and 30 pre All Star break, and then post All Star break they hit the tank button, and 5 and 21 was the result.
Damn.
So they've done this 2 seasons in a row. Um, it yeah, uh, been a really weird little run here with Utah. Um, versus the Eastern Conference, they were 15 and 15. I would want to see how many of those were in the first half of the season. Did not actually go and get those numbers, but I would assume a good bit of those were in the early part of the season. And then versus the Western Conference, 16 and 36. So they were not winning in the West. 16 and 17 in clutch games, pretty standard, and then 15 and 34 in other games. So they're getting blown out a good bit. We'll get into why, I'm sure, in the offense defense section, specifically the defense section. Do you have anything on just overall the landscape of this team last season?
Kind of a mess, I would say. But we did see some positive things. A big one being a guy that you already said, Laurie Markkinen. He really just burst onto the scene. 23 points per game last year, 8 rebounds. He shot about 40% from the 3-point line. He's really good in the post. He's 7 feet. He's a 7 foot wing. I mean, just a lot of things to like from him. Um, we saw Walker Kessler have another good year. I don't know what your thoughts are on Walker Kessler, but I am a big fan of Walker Kessler, um, and how he fits in this lineup with this team. Um, he had a very good year last year. I think he was a big part of their offense. I mean, even though their offense wasn't that, I'm sure you'll tell us it wasn't that great. Um, and Jordan Clarkson also did his thing off the bench. So I mean, they have a lot of good things, but they just couldn't really piece it together.
Mm-hmm. And one guy I want to go ahead and highlight to start, because we'll definitely get into him later. Rookie guard Keontae George was kind of, for a good bit of the season, running the show. Um, it tells a little bit about their offense, but overall their offense was actually not too bad. We'll get into the stats right now. On the season, they were a negative 5.1 net rating, which was 23rd in the league. Uh, Splitting into offense and defense, a 114.5 offensive rating, which was 18th, so not actually too bad, and then a 119.6 defensive rating, which was the worst in the league at 30th. So they were actually pretty solid on the offensive end. I think that doesn't have too much to do with the talent on their roster. I think they're maybe not talent deficient, but they're an okay offensive roster. I think we're getting to it in the scheme. I think the guy running the show, from the play calling perspective, is a really good one. Um, well, overall though, 20th in transition offense, so not, they could be a little bit better there, but it's not too horrible. In the half court, 25th in pick and roll ball handler efficiency with a 17th frequency, so they're running it pretty solid. They're not very good at it. 17th percentile. Like I said earlier, Keontae George doing a lot of this stuff. He's a rookie guard, right? It was similar with the Blazers. It's a rookie guard, and we'll get into some of the shooting stuff. There's going to be some growing pains there. Um,
Yeah.
you get into the roll man efficiency. They were third in roll man efficiency with 24th frequency. Again, if they had better playmakers on their roster, I'm sure we would have seen that frequency go up a little bit higher. But again, Keontae George, Jordan Clarkson, THT, Colin Sexton, none of these guys are great passers, although they're pretty good scorers in their own right. None of them are great passers. So their bigs were very effective. This includes Markkanen, Olenek, Kessler, John Collins. Like, these are some really good roll options, both in the roll and the pop. Maybe not Kessler with the popping, and John Collins maybe not so much, but
Yeah.
these are guys who are going to be good pick and roll pieces. 97th percentile with roll man efficiency, pretty solid stuff. And they do a lot of stuff to get these pick and rolls, you know, to get efficient shots out of the pick and roll for their
Yep.
bigs. So, just maybe need a little bit better guard play. But as of right now, that's the strength of this team very significantly. 12th in post efficiency, 23rd frequency, 62nd percentile. They're pretty solid here. It wasn't a huge part of their offense, but when they did run to it was all right. Pretty solid results. 22nd in isolation efficiency, 18th frequency, 28th percentile. Um, you, they were just a tick slow with the offensive personnel. 22nd, that kind of lines up with how I would feel about their one-on-one talent on this team. They were second in offensive rebounding. I'll get into it. We'll get into in the lineups scheme part of the lineup section. It has to do a lot with the lineups that they're running. Um, Other than that, 21st in 3-point percentage, 10th in attempts, 28th in pull-up 3-point percentage, and 18th in pull-up 3 attempts. So not a great shooting team. It gets to explain some of the struggles with this team, because they could have definitely been a little bit better if they could just make a little bit more open shots. So, did you have anything on their offense before we get to their defense?
No, I mean, I think you pretty much touched on it all. Really good big play last year. Guard play was good, but they don't have a true like point guard. I would say they don't have a guy that can go out there and give you like 6, 7 assists. I mean, Keontae George is great, obviously. Colin Sexton is really good. Jordan Clarkson's all good, but they're more scoring guards, not pass first options, like you said. And yeah, I mean the shooting is just kind of it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Just because they're missing so much, they're missing so much, but they're taking so much as well. So it's kind of like the Wizards when they knew they were bad at it, but they just kept doing it. But
Yeah.
um,
And,
obviously not to that degree. But yeah, they're just interesting.
and the guard play is really important with them because their best player is a non-guard, and he's not
Yep.
really much of a handler. So they kind of do need a guy who can run the show there. It's like similar to like if Paul George is the number one option on your team, like you still need a point guard.
Yeah.
The Clippers had this problem with Kawhi and Paul George. Like, they're not lead initiators. They're not going to do much facilitating for you. They really needed James Harden for them last season.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Yeah.
right now, Utah, I think, is really missing a lot of that. I think Orlando's seeing some of these problems. And even their guards that they did play, I think, are guys who are much better getting set up to score the ball. Um, and using their gifts that way. I don't think any of them are great advantage creators. Um, I think that's something that they definitely they know that. Like Danny Ainge is a smart guy. He understands the talent of their players.
I mean, I think that like you said, if they get a guard, just the shooting numbers will go up for the players because they're not
Hmm.
trying to create their own shot. They can catch and shoot more and stuff like that.
Yeah,
But yeah,
and like we both like the guys they have there, but you know, THT, Jordan
could be better.
Clarkson, they're not trying to facilitate. Uh, Colin Sexton's really fun, and he's pretty solid still too. He's a really good guy, but he's looking for his own a lot, right?
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
moving to the defense, like we said, 30th ranked, 22nd in uh, transition defense. So that's not very good, but it does improve a little bit, that is a little bit better than some of the other things here. 29th in pick and roll ball handler defense, 26th frequency, third percentile. They didn't have a lot of stop lockdown guards type guys. They didn't have enough of them. It felt like. Um, 15th in roll defense, third frequency, so 52nd percentile. They were all right at stopping the most efficient shots in the game, and teams ran it on them a lot. So they were, getting decent results there. It could be a little bit better, um, and I think the split between when Kessler's on and Kessler's off is really significant. Um, so if more minutes from Kessler would definitely help that, but we'll get into why that might not be a great thing later in this episode. 27 or 25th in post defense, 12th highest frequency, 17th percentile. They weren't stopping the post very well, pretty clearly. Again, similar reasons. Just their bigs were decent defensively, but other than Kessler, none of them were great. Right? There's a lot of John Collins at center minutes. He's a little undersized for center, but he would work really well offensively with marking.
Yeah,
And then isolation defense, 22nd in isolation, and then 27th frequency, so 28th percentile. Um, yeah, just not very many good one-on-one defenders here. You know, hopefully some of their moves in the offseason have changed that. And then 18th in defensive rebounding, so they were actually pretty solid there, and a lot of that has to do with the size in their lineups. Any defensive stuff, it can even transition over to scheme if you got any.
I mean, like you said, I mean, you pretty much touched on all of it, right? Not a lot of good isolation guards that can really lock down the perimeter. Colin Sexton used to be that, but he's kind of declining in that aspect a little bit just as his career goes on. I mean, Walker Kessler is a, a good rim protector. I think he had 2.4 blocks a game last year. They like to play him and drop for sure. Um, just something I noticed. And I mean, they can pretty much they can pretty much switch. Colin Sexton, even though he's 6'3", he's a guy that we've talked about it somewhere that he plays a lot bigger than his size. Um, Obviously, Laurie, John Collins, like you said, he gets center minutes and he can also guard um, twos, threes. So yeah,
Mm-hmm. And this was also a team that traded a lot of their better players at the deadline too. Going into their lineup stuff that I alluded to earlier, they always like to play two bigs on the court at the same time. Um, One of them is usually always a spacer. What they would like to do last year was sub them out. Literally, they would sub out their two bigs for their other two bigs basically all the time. So it would be Markkinen and John Collins starting, and then when they would sub them out, they would sub in Kessler and Olynyk at the same time together. After they traded Olynyk, it was kind of just Kessler coming in for either of the guys, and you wouldn't feel too great about those Kessler Collins minutes, but the Kessler Markkinen minutes were still very solid too. And then they also like to run two guards a lot, very similar to the Cavs style of play, where they want to get a lot of their punch from their guards, but they are actually scheming up a lot of stuff for their wing creators as well. But they want to get a lot of their advantage creation out of their guards. And they, like we mentioned, they weren't getting much of that. Sometimes they would like to run 3 guard lineups if they had 2 bigs out there, um, just to get even more offensive punch. Um, and yeah, this is year 3 for Will Hardy. I want to mention that. Um, I think he's a really good coach. Um, he runs a lot of like really creative stuff that not many other teams run. He 2 years ago they really popularized the delay actions that are all over the game now. They've kind of strayed away from that as more teams run it, but they like to run a lot of off-ball stuff for Larry Markkinen, and that has really like been the catalyst for his ascension into this All NBA caliber player that he is now. Um, and he comes from the Popovich tree, like forever. He was forever
Yeah.
in that system. So I believe that this guy's a good head coach. Um, defensively, Kessler's in a drop. They play Collins a little higher, but they're at their best when Kessler is in drop. Um, yeah. Do you have any other scheme talks on them?
Just a lot of. I mean, I noticed a lot of pick and roll action through their offense. When Kessler would run the pick and roll, he would be rolling to the basket. I saw whenever Markkinen and Collins would do it, they would be kind of popping to the 3 point line. Maybe Markkinen, being able to roll to the basket at some times. Um, yeah, it's a lot of passing too,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of off ball movement, like you said, off
Yeah.
ball stuff.
It wasn't a very good team last season. I think a lot of that by design. Um, they've been 2 seasons in a row where they haven't been too interested in really making that all out push. So if we want to
Or
go forward to
rebuilding.
the yeah, the big reason for that was to get their draft pick this year, which I don't know. Some people would argue that you would want to have not gotten your pick in this year's draft, but
Yeah.
that should transition us to the offseason. The guy they wanted to get their pick for, probably, because I had seen this guy going a little bit later in some drafts and a little bit earlier in some, was Cody Williams at 10. It was a top 10 protected pick. They got it at 10. Um, they also selected Isaiah Collier at 29 and Kyle Filipowski at 32. I'll go ahead and say before we individually talk about these guys, I had all 3 of these guys at top 25 grades. Uh, Isaiah Collier, I think I was really high on compared to draft consensus. I had him like top 10, right? That's how I generally felt about Collier. Um, and I had Cody Williams maybe a little bit lower than 10, but I still had him in a late lottery pick. So, uh, any one of these guys that you want to, if you want to speak on them, give you the floor.
I mean, is there anyone you really want to touch on before I get into it?
Yeah, I'll do the Collier one because
Okay.
I
All right. Well, I was going to start with Cody Williams. So,
okay, yeah, start with Cody Williams.
all right. Well, Cody Williams played at Colorado last year. Interesting that we've talked about 3 Colorado prospects now from last year's team,
Mm-hmm.
um, and they didn't even make it to the second round of uh, the tournament. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think.
It was
Anyways, so 6'6", 178, 7'1" wingspan, lots to like there. He had 11 points per game last year at Colorado, shot 41% from the 3 point line shot almost 2 attempts per game. He's really good at finishing at or around the rim. He can score above the rim as well. Really good dunker. Um, and he can space the floor, right? This is what we talked about with what they like to have out there, guys that can space the floor. They had 3 point deficiencies last year. This is a guy that shot 41% in college, and 55% from the field. So lots to like, and he's also defensively versatile. That 7'1" wingspan plays helps a lot because of that. Really long. He's tall. Pause. So just a lot to like there.
mm-hmm.
Some of his weaknesses is he just not he's not a playmaker, and he doesn't really have a game inside the inside the key, like mid range floater. It's not really a strong suit of his game.
Yeah, he is really good at getting to the rim. He struggles a little bit finishing at the rim, is what I like to say about him. I do like his handle a lot. I do think if he can become a solid NBA scorer, he looks okay enough as a passer. Um, with him, we won't actually hit on these guys in the offseason losses because they were mid-season last year. Oshai Abaji and Simon Fontecchio, those were two of their like actual wing-sized players that they had last season. They were actually some of their better players, like by net rating, and they no longer have those guys. Those are the only wing-sized guys. Cody Williams legit gives them that. Additionally, I don't know if you knew this, but he's Jalen Williams of the Thunder's brother.
Are they? They're
Uh,
all brothers.
no, okay, I have to clarify because there's two
Oh,
Jalen
oh, oh,
Williams.
Jalen Williams. Oh, okay, okay. The
Yeah,
guard.
yeah, the guard Jalen Williams, not the
Oh,
center Jalen Williams.
I was gonna say, bro, they got three brothers. That's crazy. Nah, that's interesting though. That's
Yeah,
of course.
and
I mean, it makes sense, right? Runs.
yeah, they play pretty similarly. I think Cody also has a concern of needing to bulk up a little bit. Yeah, I did really like Cody Williams though. I thought he was a lottery talent in this draft. That I thought was a little bit underwhelming, but you know, I still really like Cody Williams. Isaiah Collier, um, I was definitely higher on him than consensus. We had actually off 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 the recording, we had discussions about his listed height. I think you
Oh
had
yeah,
your normal website had him at 6'2", and
yeah. But I
then
saw him at 6'6".
on Basketball Reference,
I'm pretty sure. I'll double check while you talk about him, and then I can tell you.
yeah, and then I had him around 6'3", 6'4". I think he measured in at 6'2.5" without shoes, so that's about 6'3", 6'4". Um, yeah, so Isaiah Collier, how I like to describe him is he's that really good athlete, but not the explosive athlete. He is a really athletic player, but he's also really smart with his athleticism. Similarly to like maybe he's not as good of an athlete as Donovan Mitchell, but the similar type of footwork, similar type of intelligence on how to use his athleticism, very similar to Donovan Mitchell, and that's the name that kept popping to me for him. He's really physical, um, and he lacks the ability to actually like dunk on people in game. Like he can dunk, obviously, but like
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
not
yeah.
gonna go to the rim and slam it on people. But um, he's still very athletic. He has a really good first step, and his understanding of angles and using strength to score at the rim is like it's not like it's the secondary things of scoring that I think goes really underrated. He's really good at that stuff. And when players who are already athletic get to the NBA and suddenly everybody's athletic as them, they need these type of skills to really succeed at the next level. My big concern with him is his pull-up shooting. He needs to improve. Otherwise, I don't know how good he's going to be as a facilitator. This is the skill for me. If he develops as a pull-up shooter, like Donovan Mitchell did coming out of college, like Donovan Mitchell is an elite pull-up three-point shooter at this point in his career, and that was not on his draft profile.
Yeah.
Um, if Collier can do that, then I really believe in this guy uh, to be a number one scorer. And I didn't know there might have been two of those guys in this draft. Like Collier, that's about it. Like there was no other guys who really flash number one scoring potential. Um, Other than that, he looks like a really good passer as well. He throws the ball away a little bit too much, but I think a lot of that is just that a lot of that stuff can be fixed. His instincts are there. He makes the difficult reads. Um, you just have to cut down the turnovers, and I think a lot of that can be done in the NBA. And he's 6'4", roughly 6'4". He's decently athletic. His wingspan, I believe, was like a +2, +3, at like 6'5", 6'6". I am confident that he could play in the NBA on defense. So that's my Isaiah Collier. Um, my spiel on him. I'm really high on him. I'm interested in how you evaluated him.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much have all the same things. A concern I do have for him is just him as a primary ball handler. He was top 20 in turnovers per game last year in NCAA. He had 3 point in college basketball. He had 3.3. And it was like careless turnovers, just shit that didn't really make sense. That's my one concern for him. I don't think he's going to be put in a role where he's going to have to handle the ball and get a bunch of assists per game, um, at least early in his career. So I hopefully that won't be an issue. But there is a lot to like about him. I'm not trying to take anything away from him. Like you said, incredible finisher. Um, I think he has I think he has good catch and shoot ability and off the dribble a little
Hmm.
bit. But like you said,
I forgot to
his
mention
pull up,
that.
yeah. But his pull, like you said, his pull up does need some work. But um, this is I like this pick. I really do. Yeah, I really like the pick. I think Isaiah Collier is great for
Yeah,
them.
at 29, like it's
Yeah.
really really good value for him. Um, with him, he played on a really bad USC team, and he had to do so much for them. Just want to touch on the turnover stuff. Um, they were like basically it was a really bad November for him, where he had 34 turnovers, to 30 assists. In March, he only had 18, or he only had 13 or no, I said 18, right? 18 turnovers. Um, in February, he only had 13, right? Like this, you know, his turnover stuff was just one really bad month to start the season for me. And like, there's still some concern that he does need to fix that in the NBA, but uh, I'm not too concerned with his passing ability. He looks like he can, pass out of those advantages that he can really create. And I don't think anybody on Utah has the number one scoring ability, potential at least, that this guy does. That's why I really like the pick for them. Um, and then flip Kyle Filipowski. Um, just I had a top 25 on him. He fell to 32. I'm sure not his family, but his family situation is glad he ended up in Utah. Um, so I'll let you get the floor and flip.
Well, before I get into all the good things about him, let me just say this is my least favorite player, uh, probably in the NBA right now, just because of last year. One of the worst, like probably one of the most hated players in college basketball. I don't think
Hmm.
anyone liked this guy. But let's get into it, right?
But he is an
uh,
awesome
he
player.
he is a really good player. Yeah, that's why everyone hated him so much. He
Hmm.
shot he shot okay, sorry. So he's the ability to space the floor. He shot 34% last year on 3 attempts. It's really good. He's good at attacking closeouts. Something I really liked. Um, so he has that, he has that ability to shoot it, and then when you come to close it out, he'll attack it really hard. Um, he can score off the pick and roll, something that Utah loves doing. They love giving the ball to the bigs. I think he can excel in this further on down the road. And he's good. I like his post game and I like his footwork. Even though he does struggle at finishing through contact, I think he has footwork, very good footwork. His shot selection can be a little questionable at times, and he struggles against like strong post players. We saw it with whenever they played NC State and DJ Burns would just go crazy against Duke. Um, a lot of it's because he couldn't handle the physicality of DJ Burns, um, and also quick guards he struggled against.
Hmm.
But this is also a guy that had one, 6'11", 6'10" wingspan, 16.4 points per game, 8.3 rebounds. There's a lot of good stuff there. This is a big. I can see that can, he's a space the floor big. Um, I don't know.
Yeah,
Well, he's a little bit more than that, but yeah, it's a good
yeah,
pick for them. I think it gives them more offense at the center position than they have right now. I
yeah.
think that
I
like
really
you throw him in there right now, he's the most offensively skilled.
Oh, you back?
Yeah, I was just saying that if you
All right.
throw him in right now, that he's the most offensively skilled center in my opinion
Yeah, I
that they
really like
have.
Flip. I really liked him as a screen setter. I had some worries about his defensive game just because I don't really like the athlete too much. Um, However, I do like his defensive instincts. He has pretty solid hands. So even if I don't think he's going to be saving a ton of shots at the rim, um, I still like his ability to slide into the right place. So I don't think he's going to be a defensive player of the year caliber guy, but he at least should give you solid like at the rim protection. You mentioned him struggling with taller guy or more physical post players. He does need to bulk up a little bit. He's 230 pounds at the combine. 6'11", really solid standing reach. Um, I like this guy. I have a little bit more concerns about his shooting. Um, I like his ability to draw fouls though. Solid free throw rate in college basketball last season. Um, I am a little bit more concerned about his shooting. Only 71% or 72% for his college career from the free throw line, with decent volume, and then he only really shot it from three this season. It was at 35% on 3 attempts. So maybe I'm being a little pessimistic there because he does have good touch, and that's another indicator of potential shooting success. So I don't know. I still, at the end of the day, had a top 25 grade on him. Getting him at 32, really good pick for Utah. And of course, I wanted the Knicks to take him at 25. So,
I have a question for you, Pat. Before we transition to the next segment,
all right,
do you think they addressed their playmaking issues in this draft? Their guard playmaking issues.
not right away. um, I think Collier could be that guy, but he's gonna
I
be. It's gonna be the same thing you just did with Keontae, kind of like he's gonna have to feel it out. Um, but I do think he addressed their ability to create advantages.
yeah
I think he's definitely the best athlete out of any of their guards, and he's the best guy at getting to the rim out of any of their guards now. So that is instantly going to get more easy opportunities for shooters and dunker spot opportunities. And he looks like he can pass out of those situations. So I think he is definitely going to probably be their best day one playmaker for them next year. But um, I don't think it really was that good of an increase right now. I'm sure he could develop to get a little bit better, but we brought up the turnover numbers. They're a little concerning. Um,
yeah. I oh sorry. What were you gonna
you
say?
got it. You got it.
I was just gonna say I'm not knocking this draft at all. I think this is a really good draft. Like you said, they got three players with top 25 quality. And then I mean I don't think we see this team being. I think we can both see this team being a lottery pick next year. Loaded or definitely a much better draft class next year. Maybe that's where you go get your playmaking guard, or maybe you
Hmm.
go get him in the second round. Maybe you get him in free agency. I really think they did a lot of good things here in this draft. Yeah,
Additionally, it doesn't even have to be a guard. It could just be a guy who can
yeah,
facilitate. And
true.
next year's draft is awesome, and Utah has shown that they know how to tank.
Oh
Because
yeah,
5-21 to end the year is crazy. Um, Other than that, we'll talk about the rest of their offseason. It's very easy. We can breeze by them really quick. They added Josh Christopher, interesting wing guy. Not too much more than that. Actually, that was last offseason. Why is it showing me last offseason? Okay. They added Drew Eubanks. It was on 9 million a season over the next 2 years, or 9 million total over the next 2 years. 3% of the salary cap. It's not going to hurt you. It's a veteran minimum contract, pretty much. Patty Mills on a veteran minimum. It aligns with the Spurs stuff. Um, yeah, that's basically why he got here. Svi Mikhailuk, sure, he's an NBA player at this point. He's all right. Oscar Tushbui, Babakar Sane, two-way guys, and then their draft picks. Losses, Darius Baisley, I didn't know was on this team last year, but he was there. Chris Dunn, they lost. He was pretty solid for them last season as a perimeter defender. Um, Other than that, he didn't bring you much. He kind of contributed to their scoring problem with guards because they could, he could not score. He could pass a little bit, but he could not score. Kira Lewis Jr., uh, the guy who hasn't panned out in the NBA. They lost Kenny Lofton Jr., well-known NBA tackle or NFL tackle. Taylor Horton Tucker, he just signed to an Exhibit 10 for the Bulls, so not a big loss. Luka Samanic, barely an NBA player, and then same with Omar Yurtseven, barely an NBA player. Unless you have any comments to make on those guys, we'll
They
go
also
forward to.
lost Russ.
Yeah, they lost. They they waived Rust again for him to go to a contender.
No, that's all I have.
And
I mean,
Russ wouldn't
Chris.
want to play in Utah
Yeah, no,
because of that,
definitely not at this point of his career.
especially with that fan interaction he had like in 2018.
Oh, oh
Yeah,
yeah, his ass is not going anywhere near there.
yeah. Well,
I mean,
the
Chris.
last you got it. Chris
I
Dunn's
was gonna say
solid.
Chris Dunn. Chris Dunn was really good defensively, and I mean, he was all right offensively, I guess.
Hmm.
Um, but I mean, yeah, it's not too bad. I
It's
really don't think it's an issue because I mean he's not big enough where I'm like, damn, this sucks.
They couldn't
I
have
mean,
got a first round
let's be
pick out of
real.
Chris Dunn.
Isaiah Collier, if he turns out what we think he's gonna be better than Chris Dunn.
He needs
So
those minutes. Yeah. Um. Next up for their offseason, this is the final talk I have to make here. I had alluded to it at the start of the episode. Larry Markkinen could have really messed up our show here. He signed on a renegotiate an extension, basically gave him $25 million extra dollars for this season, and then added on 4 years at 196 $1 million, which is a 30% max. That does go down a little bit with the cap rising, but it starts at a 30% max. I want to say this on Larry Markkinen, really good player. I would say he's probably worth this money. One note that I have before, if he would have signed the contract, basically he could have signed the contract on August 6th. But he waited till August 7th because waiting till August 7th made it to where he cannot be traded until the day after the trade deadline this season. So Larry Markkinen is spending the whole season not worrying about trade talks until next offseason in Utah, which is clearly where he wants to be. Anything on the Lowry extension?
I mean, I think it's pretty big, right? I mean, Utah has a franchise player now in Larry Markkinen. If they hopefully they choose to keep him. I've liked Larry ever since he was on the Cavs. Where was he on the first? The Cavs or the Bulls?
Bulls.
Bulls. I liked him when he was on the Bulls. He was really good on the Cavs. I thought he went to Utah, and I mean, man, he fucking blossomed. Yeah, I already talked about him a little bit earlier in the episode, but there's a lot of things I like about him. I mean, if this team just gets competitive, I think he only gets better because he kind of learns how to become a winner. Um, I don't know. I really liked it. I like it. I like Larry Markkinen. I think he deserves this type of money. I think Utah did the right thing about with locking him down. Good for them.
Mm-hmm. And Lowry, I want to contextualize him compared to Brandon Ingram because I'm sure there's a lot of people who are confused how Lowry easily gets this contract and Brandon Ingram is now holding out. Larry Markkinen's a lot better than the type of player like a Brandon Ingram, a Julius Randle, guys in that range. Like he's definitely a step above that, and I think playing on Utah has made people not really realize that, so they just think he's a guy putting up a bunch of stats. He's a really good player. Yeah, that's all I have on
He's not
Markkinen.
one of these tank. He's not a tank leader. He's actually a good player, but he
Yeah,
is a tank leader. But he's
he's a
actually a good player.
he's a good player that's leading a tank team.
Yeah,
Not a well. They had to bench him this season, right? Like they had to bench him to tank this season. Like he's a good player. Um, they also have cap space next season. They have max cap space next off season. If they were to spend that, I doubt it'll be on a max player because it's Utah, but they will have a lot of ability to get better next off season if things start to trend in the right way. Um, other than that, lineup data that I've pulled, Larry Markkinen was their only positive player in net rating at .7. This was a bad team. I'd mentioned before, negative 5.1, I think, was the number for this team. Players that had positive net ratings with Larry Markkinen on the court: Chris Dunn plus 6.3, Taylor Horton Tucker plus 2.2, Jordan Clarkson plus zero point 0.9, Colin Sexton plus 0.5, Simon Fontecchio plus 4.8, O'Shea Adbaji plus 0.1, and Kelly Olynyk plus 5.5. If we go and look at these players, Chris Dunn, THT, Fontecchio, Adbaji, Kelly Olynyk are not on the team anymore. So they got rid of
crazy.
and the two that they kept, Jordan Clarkson and Sexton, were two of the lower ones here. So clearly they still want to take. They only get their first round pick next year if it's within the top 10. This is a draft that you want to be in the top 10. Ideally in the top like 4, right? You want to be one of those last teams. But yeah, this is a draft. This is a season where they're clearly trying to tank just based off the roster construction here. Even if some of the losses we didn't think were that big, like they would have made the team better keeping some of those guys. Um,
I got
I
a
want to talk
question real
about.
quick for you, Pat.
All
Sorry.
right, you got it.
When you mean top 10 protected, that means the only way they have a pick next year if they finish within the top 10 in the lottery.
Yeah, so after the lottery, if that pick is top 10, then they would get it.
So they
But
could
if
hypothetically have a really shitty year, have the best odds, but fall out and not have a draft pick next year because they get like the what's the lottery go up to 14?
yeah, but they can fall to 14 if they had a really shitty year. I think the
Yeah, that's what I'm
lowest you can
saying.
fall to 11 is like 5 or 6 probably. If you're at 5 or 6, you could probably fall to 11. But if they're shitty next year, then they will get
They'll
the
be good.
pick. Yeah.
Okay. I was just
Um.
throwing out a scenario. I just wanted to make sure I understood what you meant by top 10 protected.
Yeah, and if they were projected 14th in the lottery and they move up to 4, which they couldn't move up to 5 or 6, like they would have to move up to top 4, then they would
Yeah.
get the pick.
Okay.
So,
Cool.
um, two more things. There were rookies last year. Keontae George, his net rating was negative 9.2. With him, I really liked him as a player. I had him as a lottery talent last year. They took him at 16. He was really interesting. That is his college. This is his split stats. As a starter last season, he averaged 14.9 points per game, with 5.2 assists. Uh, his efficiency was 52% true shooting percentage, which is not very good, and he had a ton of turnovers in this time. Um, as and his usage rate was 4 points lower than or 4 points higher than when he was a reserve player or a bench player. Um, as a bench player, he still averaged 11 points per game. Uh, his true shooting percentage was pretty solid at 57%. Like that's about league average, which is pretty solid for a rookie guard. And then his usage rate was 4% lower, and his turnovers were not as big of an issue. Clearly, this was a guy who was overtasked. Even at as a prospect at Baylor and then coming into the league, he didn't really seem like a point guard. He kind of was a shooting guard, pure scorer type of guy, like really similar to Jordan Clarkson. And that's why I really liked him because I thought, hey, he's going to come here and be an off-ball guard. And they threw him on the ball last year, just tried to make it happen. It wasn't in his skill set as a prospect, and hopefully next season they can look from those numbers because his scoring output was not very different, whether or not he was getting starting role. And it's not necessarily a starter, but as a starter, he was being asked to do a lot more than he probably should have. Um, Other than that, hopefully next season gets better for him. It was a poorly spaced team. Scoot Henderson had a worse rookie season. We're not out on Scoot. We're not out on Keontae yet either. Taylor Hendricks, negative 8.8 net rating. He was a top 7 pick last season. I think he was 7th. Or he was 6th or 7th. There was a weird thing with Washington getting Bilal, but yeah, negative 8.8 is not a good number. It was a crowded, big rotation that he kind of couldn't play into very much because they had 4 bigs. Ideally he plays next to Lowry and a center because I think that could be some really interesting lineups for them. Hopefully they can get some supersized lineups with those, that like I just mentioned, Lowry in a center and Hendricks and then Cody Williams and then whoever at point guard. Hopefully a good one. Do you have anything on Keontae and Taylor Hendricks?
I mean, you pretty much touched on all of it, but yeah, I love Keontae George. I think what you said was very true. With him not shouldn't be a true point guard, and he's overtasked a lot. And unfortunately, it's probably what's going to happen next year. He's going to be overtasked again. Hopefully, that makes him a better playmaker because I mean he does have some playmaking ability. Really good scorer. Taylor Hendricks, I like. He gives you that defense. Gives you a little bit of defense. A little bit of help around the rim. I mean, 6'9", he can shoot the ball. Who doesn't love that in the NBA, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I mean, it's
And
interesting. I don't know what they're gonna do with these guys, but with I like them. I'm not out on either of them really. I think with a team like Utah, you have time to kind of play these guys out over the next couple seasons. Not really Keontae George. I think Keontae George is fine. Talking more about Taylor Hendricks. Um,
mm-hmm.
uh, for Hendricks, maybe he's kind of. I mean, if you're looking at, it, I think Keontae George is safe. Hendricks may be kind of on the fence, so we'll see how he ends up. Like you said, he doesn't really fit that well, or he kind of having trouble finding his way onto this team, the rotation. So we'll just see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's basically all that we're doing with Utah is wait and see right now.
Yep.
Um, I want one more comment on Keontae. It's really easy to count him out just based off of his shooting in college. This guy was taking a ton of difficult shots in college. Like, I don't know if this guy's ever been on a team that has set him up for success individually. Um, the big thing with him in college was his shooting. He shot about 7 attempts a game from 3 at 34% with, like, ridiculous difficulty on his shooting. Like, it was. I'm sure you watched a good bit of the Baylor games, being a Baylor fan. Like, it was. This guy can shoot, and put in a complimentary role. I'm perfectly confident in his shooting ability. So
Let him be like a catch and shoot type guy, or a guy that's a second scorer, like the second option.
let him
Like
be the
be a
third
second
scoring
guard.
option.
Yes, yes,
Let
behind
him be the
Markkinen and another guard.
if he's their starter, let him be the third scoring option, or he's your 6th man, and he can cook second units. That's how I feel about him.
Yeah,
I
they just don't have a guard. They don't have a guard to play make. So I mean,
yeah.
I think that's when you're looking at it, this Utah team is good in a kind of sense. Like you can see some good things happen. Like if this team had a guard that could play make for them, I think that
Or
I mean that
defense.
opens up or defense. Yeah, but I mean they'll probably get a guard first, then before they'll get a defense. If they had a guard that could open up so much for this. I mean, imagine Jordan Clarkson and Keontae George coming off the bench. That's a solid little bench unit.
hmm And I think the that's enough playmaking on the bench, right? Your bench scoring's not gonna be great anyway,
Yeah, yeah,
so even if they're a little inefficient on the bench, like it's bench shot creation, right? Like it's not going to be crazy efficient. We'll go forward into lineups and predictions for them. Um, yeah, so to start with their lineups, for me, looking at their depth chart, I really like just starting maybe even all three of their rookies next season. Um, right away, I think it'll still be Keontae George and Colin Sexton starting, um, with Markkinen, Cody Williams, and it'll probably still be um, either Kessler or Collins starting, but I do like Filipowski kind of playing a similar role with Kessler that Olynyk played last season. So I'll say
So what'd you say?
George
George
Sexton, Cody
Sexton.
Williams, Markkinen, and John Collins for now.
All right.
Uh,
I had it written down differently, but I think I'll change it up a little bit. I think if Cody Williams starts, that's your lineup. I had a lineup with Collins and Kessler, but you said that those minutes didn't really work out. They didn't play well together, so I'm kind of like second guessing putting them there. Um, but I mean, yeah, I'm interested. I'm not as high as on Cody Williams as I am Collier and Filipowski. Um, I don't know.
at
Maybe
least
I
for this
am.
team.
I really don't know. I yeah. I think Cody Williams can start for the Jazz. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Why
So
not?
the Kessler and uh, Collins minutes. They barely play together, only 300 minutes, which doesn't sound like a lot, but compared to the guys that did play a lot of minutes, was not a lot. Negative 20 net rating.
Yeah. So yeah. Okay. So yeah. Then I would go Cody Williams and John Collins. Um. Yeah.
Yeah,
I did not know that pairing did not work at all.
it was.
Um.
Yeah. Negative 20 is
Uh.
crazy.
Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah. So yeah. I think that's a good. That's a good one. Yeah. I like that. And then,
If
so
they
what do you think? Who's coming off the bench? Clarkson.
Clarkson, Collier, Filipowski, Kessler, um,
Yeah. Sensabaugh.
Taylor Hendricks, Sensabaugh. Sensabaugh was really nice last year. We didn't mention him with those
Yeah,
guys,
I was about
but
to say, but I mean, yeah, I think I like that. So this might be one of the few teams that we talked about so far where the rookies are going to make like a pretty big impact. Because I think this is the first time we talked about a full draft class like actually being in a rotation. Um,
right
so
away.
I mean, I'd be happy if I'm Utah. If I'm the GM, I'm not happy if I'm a fan right now. But if I'm the
Com-
GM, I'm like, all right, this is looking good. Okay,
compared to the bad
I don't want to
teams,
watch some bullshit. I hate watching rebuilds happen, bro. That's just me as a fan.
I like
but
watching the young players. I don't like
yeah,
watching
yeah, yeah.
Evan
The
Fournier
random
playing on
bench.
a horrible team. But yeah, that's how I generally feel. Also, trade rumors have always been a thing. Walker Kessler's been in every trade rumor possible this offseason. I've seen a lot of stuff about him. He might be gone. Clarkson, I'm sure somebody's going to want Clarkson at the deadline. Once he's gone, hopefully that opens up a lot of guard minutes. I really do like the idea of Collier and Keontae George playing together.
And
Um,
Sexton coming off the bench.
yeah, Sexton, somebody might want Sexton too, right? Collier and George
Sexton,
could be a really nice fit together. They're both 6'4" guards, but I think both of them can hold up at least if they're not overtasked on offense. Think they
yeah,
can both hold up on defense, and I think there's enough scoring between those two guys to be an NBA backcourt.
yeah. Kind of going off what you said. They have a lot of like solid trade pieces on this team. And they've shown they're not shy to pull the trigger on trades in the past. Um, like Colin Sexton, he averaged 18 points per game last year on
Mm-hmm.
39% shooting from three. I don't know like how much attempts he took or whatever, but I mean that's not bad. Colin Sexton, strong physical dude, finish you contact, score around the rim. Jordan Clarkson's been one of the best six men not named Blue Will in the league forever now. Even though I'm very concerned about 3 point 29% last year. Just not. I feel like Jordan Clarkson is a way better shooter than that usually. And we've already talked about Walker Kessler, and if you get rid of Walker Kessler, I mean, I already said I like him a lot, but if you get rid of him and can get good trade pieces from that, I think
You
that's
still
good
have
because then
Flip.
you have
Yeah, you
Flip,
just
yeah,
play
and then
Flip
John Collins, yeah, and like I said, Filipowski's I think the most offensively skilled center
of
out
this
of
bunch.
yeah. I don't think he's not where Collins is right now. Obviously Collins has been in
Hmm.
the league forever, but
Yeah, I think Collins is a tad better,
I
but
think he's better right now. I don't know about in the future,
yeah,
but like obviously right now he's proven he's better. But honestly, I mean, if you are very high on Flip, I think Kessler's the number one trade option because
yeah.
I mean honestly, I mean I think you do. I mean we talked about you lose the defense a little bit because I
But
think
it
Kessler
wasn't
would
good
be a better.
anyway. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So I guess that's our little trade segment. touch up on the.
yeah. And additionally, since the Gobert and Mitchell trades happened, they have both Cleveland and Minnesota's picks next year, along with theirs if it's in the top 10. They have a ton of picks from Cleveland and Minnesota. Uh, they have a Lakers pick too from the Westbrook trade. Yeah, they have a ton of picks. Um, so any trades that they do make is already just adding to a treasure chest of picks that they have. I think this is the start of a rebuild, but they could actually be pretty solid through this rebuild, just like OKC was. Maybe he's not as good as Shea, but maybe Larry Markkinen's their Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. He'll probably get thrown in so many trade talks, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's on the next good Utah team, and that really
They should
surprises
keep
us in
him.
2027.
I think they should. I think their biggest mistake would be getting traded Markkinen, in my opinion.
hmm Um, I'm gonna go ahead and make sure we do it now because predictions. We didn't do it in Portland. Um, I don't know. It would have been Scoot, Denny Avdia, and somebody else, or Scoot would have been X Factor.
Yeah, I
Simons would
think I
have
said
been.
Anfree Simmons. Yeah,
Yeah, those
Simons.
are our answers. If anybody really wanted our answers, offensive MVP for them. I think we both have Lowry. I don't think we need to explain too much. It's pretty evident. Additionally, defensive MVP. I just kind of have to put Kessler, right?
I think he's the only one
He's
that like gives you any sort of positive like defensive metrics.
yeah. Nobody else. I think Lowry's good, but that's it. Like, it was not a good defensive team last year. And then
Yeah,
X Factor. I don't know, just everybody. I think everybody's kind of an X Factor for them.
I was gonna say John Collins, I guess, but you could also go with the rookies. You could also go with Colin Sexton. You could also go with Keontae George, right? We talked about if Keontae George fixes it. I think after just us talking, I'd say Keontae George is the X factor.
I think so too. If he can get moved off ball and really find his shot, like this could be really big for him. Take a second year leap. Um,
Sophomore season.
yeah, that's basically all we got in Utah. Do you have anything else before we close this one out? All
Nope.
right, so that'll do it for the Utah episode. The next episode will be the Dallas Mavericks episode. We shall see you then.